Forward! The young king shouted loudly, and everyone seemed to be blinded. The uninvited ray of sunlight reflected too brightly off his shining helmet. Moments later, when the soldiers and commanders tried to find his gaze, they came up empty. Sebastian the First had vanished. It was as if he had dissolved into the air, like nothing more than an illusion. Sebastian the Desired was born in January 1554 in Lisbon, just 2 weeks after his father had been laid to rest. The elderly king of Portugal looked anxiously at his tiny grandson. The fate of the kingdom rested upon this rosy-cheeked infant. It so happened that King John III had no other children or grandchildren left. According to the agreement between Portugal and Spain, if the monarch had no heirs, the kingdom would pass to the Spanish crown. The bells rang so loudly that nothing else could be heard. But who cared? Common folk embraced one another in the streets. Noble lords handed gold coins to the poor, and in the homes of aristocrats, bottles of the finest wine were uncorked. They were now safe from the Spanish invasion. The little prince needed to be carefully protected. John ordered the best wet nurses, nannies, and guards to be assigned to his grandson. Doctors were instructed to examine the boy twice a day. After all, they had missed diagnosing tuberculosis in the heir John Manuel. There could be no mistakes now. The entire state was at stake. The prince's mother, that Austrian ice queen Joanna, had not managed to love her new homeland in the 2 years since her arrival. When her father, Emperor Charles V, wrote to her that he was planning to abdicate and needed his daughter by his side, she immediately began to pack for the journey. She left her 4-month-old son behind and departed Lisbon. The boy's upbringing was entrusted to his grandmother, Queen Catherine. His mother would never see her son again. Heir Sebastian showed great promise. He grew into a strong and healthy boy, with a hearty appetite and a love for active games. By the age of 3, the prince exhibited such stubbornness and willpower that his delighted grandfather declared, "He will rule," and very soon. And so it came to pass. The old king passed away, and Sebastian was crowned at the tender age of 3. Great importance was placed on the young king's education. As soon as it was feasible, they began teaching Sebastian languages, history, literature, geography, mathematics, and Portuguese law. The boy especially adored historical tales, often spending hours in the library engrossed in some captivating tome. He imagined himself as a knight from a bygone era, embarking on distant adventures to battle the infidels. For his amusement, miniature armor was even crafted for the king. The queen grandmother could hardly contain her pride in her charge. This young lad had the potential to achieve great things. He was excelling in his studies, rode skillfully, and had known how to stand up for himself since birth. Even the powerful Cardinal Enrique de Evora, who shared the burden of governance with the queen during young Sebastian's reign, could not impose his will if the little monarch did not wish it. He was the true hope of Portugal. In fact, he was her imminent happiness. Soon, the queen and the cardinal made the difficult decision to halt Portugal's territorial conquests. The monarchy had already acquired vast territories. The latest additions, Macau and Daman, had joined the kingdom just 2 years earlier, and now the focus was on defending what they had. Pirates were plundering ships off the coasts of Brazil and India, and Muslims constantly threatened to seize Morocco, leaving the Portuguese with plenty to occupy them. The defense of their lands took precedence over all other international matters. Second on the list was the spread of Christianity in the conquered territories, a cause that the cardinal, as a spiritual leader, particularly cared about. However, the queen wisely concluded that securing forts along the coastline was the most crucial task. Protecting the merchant fleet was essential. Without new goods and fresh gold, Portugal could not survive. Unfortunately, the cardinal was steering Sebastian in a different direction. He captivated the young king with tales of military campaigns where he would achieve glorious victories, emphasizing the importance of driving out the Muslims, just as during the Crusades and the Reconquista. The child eagerly listened to Evora, as it resonated perfectly with his own aspirations. And so, at the age of 20, having freed himself from the guardianship of his regents, Sebastian decided to launch an expedition to Tangier. He intended to fight the Moors. Just then, a succession crisis had erupted in the Sultanate of Fez, and the king saw an opportunity to take advantage of the chaos. With an army composed of Portuguese, Spaniards, Italians, and Germans, he embarked on his military campaign. However, at El Carib, Sebastian was defeated. But most importantly, he vanished. His body was never found, neither among the living nor the dead. Desperate searches for the king's body yielded no results. Witnesses claimed to have seen him near the river, riding a white horse, but their accounts ended there. What had become of Sebastian? Had he perished? Or had he been captured? Portugal descended into mourning. The worst fears were coming to pass. The kingdom was now poised to become part of Spain. Naturally, King Philip II of Spain quickly laid claim to the throne. The long-standing treaty was dusted off, and there was nothing left to contest it. But in Lisbon, the Spanish were hated. The humiliating state of dependency fueled anger among everyone, from simple peasants to noble lords. Voices increasingly rose in disbelief over the king's death. The Portuguese whispered that their monarch would soon return. These rumors were dangerous, prompting Philip to loudly declare that Sebastian's body had been found and would soon be given a grand burial. A magnificent marble tomb was prepared, and the remains of the king were brought from Morocco. However, before the ceremonial burial could take place, the cruel deception was revealed. The coffin did not contain the king's body. He had never been located. The deceived Portuguese ignored the funeral for their king. An enraged Philip continued to insist, "Sebastian is dead," but no one believed him. Instead, they readily believed the impostors who quickly proliferated throughout Portugal. At least 4 different individuals claimed royal lineage at various times. This charade could lead to serious trouble. A rebellion could easily erupt, and the nobility would likely support it. Therefore, Philip made considerable efforts to capture all the false Sebastians and bring them to justice. The last of them, an Italian named Marco Catazone, was hanged in the year 1603. Yet the common folk continued to believe in their missing king. For centuries, the legend of the sleeping king was passed down in Portugal, a tale of a ruler who would one day awaken to save his kingdom. Even in the 19th century, émigrés from the continent living in Brazil prayed to their king protector. He had become their everlasting hope. So what really happened to the young king? His death was undoubtedly advantageous for Philip of Spain. Consequently, many historians believe that Sebastian did survive the battle but was captured and then taken to Naples, where he was kept under strict surveillance. It is also claimed that he was later buried in the Augustinian monastery in Limoges. Another version of events takes us to Venice, where a man appeared claiming to be the surviving king. He was educated, well-groomed, and carried himself in a way that led the Portuguese living in the Italian city to recognize him as Sebastian. Was he truly the king? The mystery of the vanished monarch remains unsolved to this day.